Paul Bernardo and Luka Magnotta in the same medium security jail. Sounds crazy, but it's true. Hi, I'm Brian Lilley, political columnist for the Toronto Sun. You've heard by now from the Toronto Sun how this happened. Michelle Mandel breaking the story on the weekend, me providing political commentary. It's outrageous that Luka Magnotta, a sadistic sex killer who murdered and dismembered an unsuspecting young man and was back in 2012, was convicted of first-degree murder, sent to jail, is now in a medium security prison. Same one, La Macaza, in Quebec, that Bernardo was transferred to, except Magnotta was transferred first. We know that. We also know he wants to be called Violet, and it says he wants to transition, something the doctors seem to cast some doubts on, according to the documents that Mandel got. But what's the prison really like? Because supporters of the Trudeau government, who are responsible for this due to Bill C-83, they're responsible for putting in the requirement to hold prisoners in the least restrictive environment. That was their legal change. But Trudeau supporters keep saying, well, it's still prison and there's no real difference between medium and maximum security prisons. That's not true. Frank Caputo is a Conservative MP from British Columbia. He represents the riding of Kamloops-Thompson-Cariboo. And he recently toured the prison, put out a video describing it. And I wanted to reach out to him and discuss what it was actually like when he toured not only the prison, but Paul Bernardo's cell. So, Mr. Caputo, tell me what you found when you went to La Macaza, because those of us who have been critical of this have been told, well, it's still prison. There's not a big difference between medium and maximum security. And you, as a former prosecutor, former parole officer, you've seen prisons before. You say there's a big difference between maximum and what they've got at La Macaza.
Yeah, certainly. First off, thanks a lot for having me. When we think about the differences in security, we have to think about the victims, right? And what they've experienced and what is just at the end of the day. When you walk into La Macaza, it feels like a university. Don't get me wrong, like there's barbed wire and there are double fences. One thing a lot of people don't know is the perimeter security at medium and maximum are identical. It's what happens within the jail that's really different. So I was just in maximum security last week, and it is completely confined, as in every movement, there are frisks, there are double doors everywhere. In medium security, it feels more like a university. You walk out, there's building to building to building to building. So I walk in, you see living units, you see people milling about. Frankly, some of the times you can't tell the difference between the staff and those who are incarcerated because people might be doing a job.
Wow.
And they might just be in casual attire. So you don't know if the person next to you is in jeans and doing just, an inmate job or a worker. So
they're not in like an orange jumpsuit or, the old fashioned black and white stripes.
No, when I worked in corrections, it may have changed. I think it was jeans and a blue T-shirt. I think it's something similar now. In maximum, they're very strict. For instance, even you talk about the dress code, they're strict on the dress code because, again, the security is just so elevated. When I walked into La Macaza, I felt quite comfortable. And granted, I've been in a lot of jails, but I felt very comfortable. When I was in maximum, you could just feel the tension. It's just different. It feels different. It looks different. It is different because your movements are so controlled. So you walk in, lots of buildings. If you removed the fences, it literally would feel like a university campus. Again, it is still jail. You still are incarcerated. You still can't leave, but it is quite different.
And I don't think that's what people expect to hear when discussing brutal, sadistic killers like Paul Bernardo and Luka Magnotta. And quite frankly, I'm sure there's others. We've been told, but cannot confirm because of the rights of privacy for prisoners, that Russell Williams has been moved to a similar facility, if not the same one. And so you think about their crimes, and then you think about where they're at, and it doesn't seem to match up, does it?
No, and this really, Brian, goes back to the mentality of the Trudeau government. If you want to trace it back to a specific piece of legislation, that'd be Bill C-83 from the first government that Justin Trudeau formed. That what it says is that a person must be confined in what they call the least restrictive environment. Okay, so in their eyes, it's like if a person can be managed at medium, then so be it. So when you walk into Paul Bernardo's cell, and I literally walked into the cell, it looks like every other jail cell. Paul Bernardo is not every other offender. And I think that's the point you're making when you say, look, people don't expect people who do these horrific things to be at medium security. It really, it's a question of justice in my eyes. And I mean, is this just? Is this appropriate? Which I think is a much more palatable standard for most Canadians. Don't get me wrong. I believe that there should be minimum security. I believe there should be medium security, and I believe there should be maximum security. You have to have the right security level for the right offender at the right time. And I don't know that there's ever a right time for Paul Bernardo, Luka Magnotta, and others like them, some of the worst of the worst. And we're talking about a handful of offenders, Brian, to be in medium security.
They're all labeled dangerous offenders as far as I know, and yet they're in a medium security facility. So beyond the living conditions, you found a hockey rink, a tennis court, a canteen with some great stuff to buy. Sounds lovely. Workshop, gym, weight room. Tell me about this.
Okay, there's a lot to cover. Probably the biggest. So I walked out so I came, within feet of Paul Bernardo, and as I'm walking out, I didn't want to talk to him. Obviously, we were at his cell, and he saw that I was literally, there observing it. And I see him or I see somebody coming towards me, and it's just chilling, right? You see him, and I'm out of there. So we leave, and as we're leaving, I gather Luka Magnotta walked past me. I didn't know that. The guards had to tell me that later. And I said, "What is this?" And it's a hockey rink, right? And you could tell, obviously, because they had, how you lean up nets, hockey nets up against the boards, right? The nets were leaned up on the outside, and hockey rink. You're kidding. And it doubles as a tennis court, and it's got the halogen lights like you would find at a community center. Then we go to the canteen, and I saw fresh garlic there.
So, but do prisoners have skates on them all the time? Because I'm pretty sure that a skate could be turned into a weapon pretty quickly.
Yeah, they have to sign the skates out.
Okay.
They don't have them all times, because that would be a big security risk, obviously, on so many levels. So I don't know how often they sign. No, there was, in fairness, there was a fair amount of snow on the rink, but it's there, right? If you want to shovel it off and have it there, it's there. But the tennis court too. I mean, for 3 seasons, you've got a tennis court, and you can see from the aerial photos, you can actually see the lines being painted on. If you look closely enough. The canteen was interesting. Again, somebody wants to buy a chocolate bar or something, you understand that. But again, we're talking about the Paul Bernardo and Luka Magnottas of the world. So I looked, you could buy a whole chicken for $11. It's frozen.
I just assumed they'd all be eating in a canteen somewhere, in a cafeteria, mess hall.
That's what I thought too, and from what I was told, so they can actually go and make their own food. Every unit has a kitchen. I saw that. So it's not a huge kitchen, but it's a small kitchen with an oven. The knife at least is tethered. I was thankful to see that, because it's kind of like a classic butcher knife, right? And I saw fresh garlic. I'm Italian. I'm like, what? You have fresh garlic? What for? And they said, oh, you can make pasta sauce, something like that. And ordinarily, hey, teaching somebody how to cook, that's great. But we're not talking about the ordinary offender here. And I keep coming back to that. And that's something that after 8 years, the Trudeau government has just completely missed out on. What message does that send to our victims? What message does it send to the correctional staff?
Well, I've pointed, Frank, I've pointed to C5, which I say lowered sentences for serious gun crimes, and Trudeau supporters all say, oh, no, it just got rid of mandatory minimums. Yeah, for repeat violent offenders. If you think that 5 years is too much for someone on their 3rd conviction of gun smuggling, what are the chances the judge is going to actually give a sentence of 5 years or more? That's not going to happen. They made bail so easy to get until the premiers all spoke up with one voice and said you got to fix it. They keep lowering sentences. Bail, they use the same language, the least restrictive conditions. Their view is make life easier for the convict or the prisoner, and they don't seem to pay attention at all to victims or their families.
Oh, and as a result, public safety is completely compromised. I used to teach a sentencing course at our local law school. Shout out to Thompson Rivers University Law. And so, I mean, I know this area very well on mandatory minimums. It's in my view, it's quite simple to make a mandatory minimum constitutionally compliant. In this instance, the Trudeau government doesn't care. It used to be drive-by shootings. I think it was minimum of 4 years. You can now get house arrest for that. Extortion, you can, with a firearm, extortion, period. You can get house arrest for this. And this is just gun offenses. Let's talk about sexual offenses against children. Unbelievable. I recently read about somebody who committed 4 sexual offenses. This was against an adult, their spouse, and vicious offenses. Got house arrest, Brian. After 8 years, when we have Bill C5, Bill C83, what I'm left with to conclude is this. The Trudeau government is inept at preventing crime when it deals with bail. It is inept at addressing crime in the form of sentencing, and it is inept at addressing and is inept at the consequences of crime when it comes to corrections. I mean, this is a total failure on the part of formerly Minister Mendocino, now Minister LeBlanc, and the buck ultimately stops with Justin Trudeau.
Unreal. Thanks for the time today. Thanks for describing what you saw to us, because a lot of people won't believe it until they see it or hear from someone like you. So thanks again.
Well, thank you. It's my honor and pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So let us know what you think. Does this sound like an appropriate place to be housing these guys? Should they be in maximum security? Should they have as much freedom as they do, given that their victims will never have any freedom again? Drop us a comment, send us an email, comment down below, share this on social media where you're still able to, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel.